Thank you for staying with us. President Bola Tinubu has directed that all official entourage to state and international events be slashed by 60%. The president also instructed that for every local trip of government, security details will henceforth be drafted from the host state. The development was made known by the presidential spokesperson, Ajuri Ngelale, at the State House in Abuja. He explained that by the new directive, the president will now travel with only 20 officials. The vice president will travel with 5 officials. The first lady and the wife of the vice president also have 5 accompanying officials, respectively. He also explained that the president is determined to bring total sanity and prudence to the management of the commonwealth of the people, so government wastage will not be allowed. Joining us in Abuja studio is a strategist, policy analyst, group CEO, Global Investment and Trade Company, Baba Yusuf. Thank you for joining us this morning.
Thank you for having me, Veronica and Kenny. Happy New Year.
The same to you. And also in our Abuja studio is a strategy consultant, public affairs analyst, Kenny Adenuba. All right. Kenny, all right, we hear Kenny will join us soon on the program. But let's begin with you, Baba Yusuf, with this move by the government to ensure some level of prudence in the system. I wonder if that's how you see it, or it's just a reactionary measure. Recall that last year, for the COP27, Nigerians reacted to the number of entourage we saw that the government took to that event. But the government came out to clarify the number, that it was just over 400 persons that it took as delegates to that event. Is this a reaction to that, or government is moving in that direction of really cutting down on the cost of governance?
Thank you for that question. In my opinion, I don't think it is a reaction to a particular event regarding the COP, the event in Dubai recently. But I think Mr. President has decided to review the entire situation in the country vis-a-vis his emergence as president, and probably has taken stock of, things over the holiday period and decided to move into 2024 with a new template and action plan, which is very okay. Because if you look at the sequence of events since we resumed work from the holidays, you will see that there's a chain of events and actions that are triggered by the action of Mr. President that will clearly tell us or give us indication of how Mr. President wants to direct the affairs of the country going forward. So to me, it's a very welcome development, and I'm very happy with this because I belong to the group of people that have been very vocal about the cost of governance in various fora. In fact, I dedicated 3 episodes of my column on The Nation to speak to the issue of cost of governance, The Nation newspapers to speak to the issues of cost of governance, and also the critical issue of fiscal discipline. In the last column and in this studio, I also mentioned the importance of alignment between fiscal discipline and fiscal policy. And these are some of the key, items within the framework of fiscal discipline. It's a welcome development. We wait to see the turnout of events. However, having scaled down the contingents, we'll also like to see the cost efficiencies of the travels. So apart from the numbers also, the gist or the cream la cream will be the cost efficiencies that will be able to rein in from this contingency scale down. Thank you.
I think it's even the tail end of your analysis so far that I also want to pick up on. How sufficient do you think this step in the right direction, as many, including yourself, have called it? How far it will go in ensuring what the government is talking about in terms of total sanity and prudence in management of our resources?
Yes, this is the first step, I guess. I think this is a sign of days to come. If, Mr. President will sustain this move, I believe he will do. This is, like I said, an indication of, potentially what will come, ahead. Scaling down the number of contingencies by 60%, is a huge one for me, because the disposition of government and governance in the last 8 years, has made it so bad that Mr. President scaling down, these contingencies by 60% is a huge one for us. But then, like the question you asked, very important. That is just a first step. And like I said, the cost efficiencies. But beyond that, we expect to see, other actions. I don't want to second guess Mr. President, but they will always contribute, to the narrative, to the planning, that control and ensuring compliance with rules and regulations will also be key, because you can scale down. Are we going to see that in action? For example, year on year, we've heard about removing policemen from, doing domestic work for VIPs. That has not been effective.
Well, the spokesperson to the president has said that anyone who flouts this directive will do that as his own peril, so to speak, if I may use that word. So I want to believe there should be some level of compliance.
I hope so. Like I said, we heard the Inspector General of Police, who's acting under the directive of Mr. President, Veronica, and that has not been done. But we'll continue to be positive, but we'll continue to reiterate that the execution will tell us how serious government is taking going forward. I want to believe that we'll expect to see. But like I said, the cost efficiencies will tell us whether the scaling down has been effective or not.
Okay, let's come back to our Lagos studio now, where we have strategy consultant, public affairs analyst Kenny Adenuba. I initially said that you were in Abuja, so somehow I think I transported you to Abuja and brought you back to Lagos. Good morning. It's good to have you here.
Good morning.
Happy New Year.
I wish you the same.
Welcome. Now, we're talking about the president's move, cutting down the number of entourage to, across journeys outside the country and within the country, so to speak. And the spokesperson of the president also went ahead to say that any person who flouts this directive will have themselves to blame, so to speak. So it is a matter of how far-reaching is this move by the government, where we're looking at cutting the cost of governance, as well as the level of implementation that you are hoping to see, just as our guest in the Abuja studio has mentioned.
Yeah, like everybody has been saying, it's a step in the right direction.
Right.
At least it shows the morning. This morning shows the next few years of this government. Now, the reality on ground is that this is required, and it's long coming. We've been waiting for things like this. Because, and I think the president is quite listening, let me put it that way, because there have been a whole lot of talk around this. I mean, the entourage, the cost of all of these things and what have you, how many vehicles are following, how many people are on one trip or the other. And let's start from there. It's not exactly where I believe the president is going, but you must start from somewhere. It's like take it bit by bit. Now, for me, I believe that Mr. President comes across as someone who has the will to enforce certain things. I mean, we just saw what happened. I mean, the previous administration, some of the things that we're seeing in the last 1 week plus, will probably have been brushed aside by the presidency of the time and what have you. But so we can see the will to deliver and the will to actually stay with whatever it is that's decided this time around. And for me, that is quite encouraging for me. Of course, it's just the beginning, I believe, because now we look at the cost of governance being driven down. This will go a long way for the body language and for the optics, first and foremost, because that's critical. Once the president comes up with this and they're enforcing it gradually, others will begin to realize that there is a need to also take caution and do what is right. Unfortunately, we have state governments that are not towing this line, or so far, they've not given the populace the reprieve that's required, because they are the closest with the local government to the people, and that is actually where the dividend of democracy, the dividend of good governance really shows. Everybody is trying to talk about the federal government, but the state government is where the greatest impact comes from. So we need to also begin to call our governors to question, what is your cost of governance? So if governor is going somewhere, you see Entourage as if it's the American president that's going somewhere. Just within this town, within the capital of the state. And you see all manner of things that's going on. So the question is, how do we begin to drive down this cost of governance? In corporate environment, they will tell you that just taking away paperwork, that you have to just do whatever you want to do digitally, send mails, do this, get approvals by mails and what have you, has implication on cost, on the overhead cost. Even within the corporate environment, how much more this kind of thing we're talking about. So if we have this cut down, I believe that strongly it will begin to send the right messages to the people that yes, now the government also is thinking about going lean because the economy is lean. But where the economy is lean, you're telling people to make sacrifices. Right. And we can't see the optics from the government that is asking us to make sacrifices, that they are also cutting down. Then people are going to be like, you know what, you're just telling us what you're not even doing. It's like, do what I say, and don't do what I do. Right. So you can't tell me to be fasting, and I see you tearing at chicken or turkey, laps and what have you. I'm going to tell myself, you know what, there's no monkey in Idori any longer. Even the ones that used to be there are now wearing suits. So in a way, that is what we see, and I believe that this is a step in the right direction. It's just the beginning, I want to believe. Like he said, without trying to preempt the president, Mr. President, we want to believe that this is just the beginning. Let's start from somewhere.
In fact, the president himself, apologies to interrupt, has been quoted as saying that indeed it is the beginning, of more adjustments, to reflect the true situation of our Commonwealth, so to speak. But you say you don't want to preempt the government. Perhaps what other areas are you looking at? Because this news has also brought up a lot of reactions, with people also saying perhaps the government should look in these directions and perhaps maybe reduce the number of appointees. Yes. Do you think that the number of appointees are commensurate with the expectations that the president have given to them to deliver, and so far have they delivered to merit their existence?
The reality, what I would say about that is this. In the world generally today, I think we are one of the most bloated governments, the way I see it. You have ministers, you have special advisors, you have special assistants. All of them also have their own special assistants or assistants and PA. They are PA to PAs and what have you. And that is, I don't know where that culture came suddenly on us, maybe from 1999. And we now have retinue of staff and assistants all over the place. The question is, what are the ministers doing that you would then not have, that others will also now be doing? At the end of the day, you realize that there are a lot of overlap in responsibilities and roles, and one feeding into the other, and you're asking questions. So what exactly are people doing? Because at the end of the day, of course, people will not complain, especially those who are appointed.
Of course.
No, because, of course, we always say that when you're eating, the table manner says when you're eating, you don't talk. But the reality is this: we have a bloated government at the federal and state level, even local government level. And that actually has trickled down to even the student unions.
Right.
Because you find it's all about the mentality. We're creating certain parameters for people, and they're watching. Student union government, you see a student union president, and all they're telling you is that he also has assistants and special assistants. The student union government in the university is already having like 20 people assisting him to do what? So I think we need to begin to look at some of these things and cut down. The cost of governance is high and heavy. So there are special assistants and what have you. We need to look at how do we reduce, and how do we also look at when they want to go out and to places and what have you, can we shut down certain things? You don't need to travel on business class if you must travel.
Right. Let's get back to Abuja, where we have Baba Yusuf speaking with us. Let's go to the foundation or the root of this matter of having bloated governance. There are those who have said that it begins from our electioneering process, where so much is invested into the election, and we give appointments just so as to perhaps pay back those who put in so much effort for those who emerged at the end of the day. Do you also share that view with persons who think that that is where it begins from, this matter of we having an bloated level of governance? Is that where it begins? I'd like to get your reaction.
Partly so, but not wholly so. Right. Because what I mean is that, yes, there may be that compelling need to quote and unquote settle or compensate political actors that have made contributions to a political success or a process. But I think it has to do with a national cultural malaise or the disposition of the leader, as the case may be. There's a lot of pressure, especially at the first instance, what I call the high or the anticlimax of winning elections, and try to, placate and demonstrate that reverse loyalty to people that were loyal to you, which we have seen not just in the case of President Bola Tinubu, but even his predecessors. But that being said, as we can see, I can use the case of former President Olusegun Obasanjo, for example, and former President late Umar Musa Yar'Adua, and now we have President Bola Tinubu. As they settle into office, they change disposition and they change direction. And that helped their various administrations to be more, on course. That being said, also, the leader will decide, does he want to sacrifice, governance, good governance on the altar of jamboree, quote and unquote, governance type style? I don't think President Bola Tinubu, in fact, I'm very sure he doesn't have that luxury of time. And that is why we can see the change in tact, or maybe it is a module of an overarching strategy going forward for him. But that being said also, like I said, it's a natural cultural malaise, not just in the case of Mr. President, even at the subnational, we can see in the other arms of government, in the judiciary, in the National Assembly, and even in the corporate world. This wastage mentality has to be, done away with if we want to move forward as a country. And I think these actions in the last couple of days are a sign of days to come, if sustained, because sustainability is very key. But permit me to quickly contribute to that very vital question with regards to what do we do? Is it just about scaling down an entourage? I think there are more fundamental institutional actions, that has to be, undertaken, to change the culture and to change the attitude. For example, I want to see going forward, very importantly, the role of the Accountant General of the Federation and the Auditor General of the Federation that have become more or less what I call spectators in a lawn tennis match, looking left and right throughout the motions, and then maybe sometimes giving us reactionary reports. Part of the responsibilities of Auditor General and Accountant General, as the case may be, include proactive measures to contain and stop corruption or wastages in government or governance or any institution. I hope in the KPIs of the Accountant General and Auditor General, Mr. President also will include what they have saved Nigeria, not for them to come and tell us what has been lost, and not to be able, the case we have now at hand with the case of the unfortunate situation in the Ministry of Humanitarian is a case at hand. These things could be curtailed, and a lot of other ones. And of course, other institutional, provisions to be made. For example, we are facing an economic crisis, no doubt about it, socio-economic crisis. The president can put a cap with regards to monthly expenditure going forward on all MDAs until we get out of the malaise and say up to so amount, no provision should be made until it is gone with due recourse to the Federal Executive Council or the President, as the case may be, because we are not in ordinary times, for example. And also to remind all of us that the budget is supposed to be a tactical planning document. It is not an instruction to go and just spend all the money for a jamboree. So you see people reacting to this, and that is part of the problem. But when you have these controls and the people within the structures, whether they are accountants, or finance people or the auditors, do their job, these controls will control wastages and excesses. And of course, I expect Mr. President, while at it, empower these people, because part of the problem is they don't want to step on toes so that they get fired. I will contribute more to that, but I believe there are some key institutional things that need to be done if we want to see the end to this, apart from the optics and body movements.
Right, let's compare your thoughts, Mr. Baba Yusuf, with that of Mr. Kenny here. So, what he said, has also raised an interesting point, especially for the current ministers in the Tinubu administration, because to channel funds, appropriately. What are your expectations that these crop of ministers we are seeing in this dispensation will be able to innovate and be more productive, and of course, in the line of our discussion today, stop the culture of waste?
Well, like he said, we must begin to look at stopping this unfortunate culture of wastages. And at the same time, there must be KPIs. Of course, I believe that there are KPIs for the ministers, the permanent secretaries, and what have you. And the president has already said there's a quarterly appraisal.
Yes.
So that is where I believe some of these things should stem from. To be able to say, okay, fine, in the last quarter, or previous quarter, or this quarter, this is what you have done. What's your saving culture? How well have you been able to do things at the minimal cost? And then, of course, like I was telling someone 2 days ago, I said, I think we need to still take a look at the Oronsaye report.
Yeah.
It's very vital for us if we must go forward, because it helps to be able to streamline things so that we can go lean and more effective. You see, the challenge we have is we've spread ourselves sideways, that to have a projectile movement forward faster is a problem. So we need to begin to look at how some of these things will work. And at the same time, like I said, there must be appraisals. Before, we didn't have, ministers didn't have much appraisals. But now, let us run it the way it is run. If you don't meet up, you know that you are, and the president said it, you know that you are on probation. And if after a while it comes clear that you don't have the capacity, you shun the door so that somebody else who has the capacity can step in and get the job done. But those jobs must be done with minimal cost to government. That is what we're looking at. Governance shouldn't be so expensive the way it is right now in our nation. We've seen it all over the world. People, we have this culture of the big man mentality in the way we want to run things, either as minister, as even ordinary special assistant, or PA. Also want to be like, I'm the boss in my own little way, and then do certain things. So let it be that there is a way we are able to cut down on costs, and let there be appraisals. You're doing your work, but at minimal rates. So let it be a cost leadership approach to governance. I think that is one thing that will help us going forward. Because right now, we are on the edge of the cliff, economically. So we need to actually pull ourselves back, and it's going to take a lot even of sacrifice, even from government. And like he said, and I've mentioned, the subnationals have a lot to do more beyond the federal government in all of this. But are our governors listening? That's the question. We must always, and I've told people, we must call our governors to question on a lot of things that is going on. Security vote, all manner of things that is with them. What are they doing? Every month or every quarter, there is sharing of funds. Federal allocation is shared. How are you spending this? How about your IGR? Some states actually can't even boast of any meaningful IGR. They only depend on federal allocation. Even the one that you depend on, what are you doing with it to be able to generate income for your state, to invest properly within the state environment, to be able to say, okay, fine, you know what, we've invested as a state, and this is coming back. Every state has potentials. That is the truth. But our people are in governance today at the subnational are just waiting for doling out from the federal government, which it should not be. And we must begin to look at devolution gradually, whether we agree or not. That's why the burden from the federal can be lessened, and the subnationals can take up responsibilities of governance to affect and impact on the people positively. So when we're talking about the federal government, most of the time we always think about federal, but the subnationals are where the issue comes in most. And they're the ones who affect most of these things we're talking about. So at the end of the day, we must begin to look at these things and call to questions, because it pays the governors at the subnational that everybody is looking at the presidency or the federal government. It pays them because eyes are not on them. But now we must put our eyes on them. That's the truth. Because whatever they do also impact at the federal level. At the subnationals, if they are able to take care of things, then the burden on this federal will be lesser. And then they can also be able to focus on a number of things. So what is the accountability level at the subnationals? We're talking about the federal level now. But at the subnationals, what are also the accountability level? Are the governors accountable? How about the commissioners? How about the people that are working with the special advisors? How about the ministries? And the reality is this, the career civil servants have a role to play in all of this. That's the truth. They have a role to play. The permanent secretaries have roles to play. And that's why I'm glad that the president said they also have part of the appraisal considerations. Because if you don't help your minister to deliver, and you're playing politics or you're doing whatever with your office as a permanent secretary, then it also comes to impact on you. So I think those are the things we need to begin to look at, because the permanent secretaries are the chief accounting officers of the ministries. So they must be taken into account. But unfortunately, most of the time, we just gloss over things. But this time around, I think the cheese needs to be considered. So things must change going forward. We must question things. The president has started it for us to say, we're cutting down cost of governance. This one by 60%. How about other areas? We need to start looking at them. And I believe, like we said, that this is going to go on. It helps us to fire us and to also say, if this has happened, then we are asking for more.
Let's get Baba Yusuf's perspective to the matter of subnationals. Over time, there's been talk about this matter of security votes. What really is being done with this money is the matter of accountability to all of the monies that federal allocation that these state governments get, but not much is being seen with regards to that. If we are to entrench the culture of accountability in the subnational, how should we go about it?
Thank you. The way to go about it is very straightforward. In line with the principle of separation of powers, Mr. President cannot instruct the governors to do, things. As we saw in his statement yesterday, he advised or urged or encouraged the subnational, like the governors, to follow suit. I believe it will happen because that is the power of quintessential leadership. I've also written variously on that in my column, that if Mr. President takes an action, it has a cataclysmic impact, vertical, horizontal, and diagonal. And you will wait and see in the next 1 week, you will see those governors also trying to show a semblance of cutting down their costs. But the issue is the depth of corruption, the depth of malice that our subnational is sought because of lack of pressure at the subnational by the indigents or by the people at the state level. So it is the citizens that actually have a lot of work to do in that instance. First of all, at the election point, which is still a complex situation, and then when people get elected, how do the citizens apply pressure individually and collectively, either as organizations and so? Because while we have, and I must commend a lot of civil society organizations, the trend I'm seeing is also very worrisome. It's a topic for another day. How CSOs are also becoming special purpose vehicles, to become stumbling blocks to the fight against corruption, which leaves most to be desired. That is the sad situation we have in the country. It is only that way that you can checkmate the governors, and that is why the governors of the states of Nigeria are the most powerful governors in the world. They are the people that even control the president. Most of the time you see, in a manner of speaking, the tail wagging the dog. We have seen it build up to elections, and even in the build up to the presidential election 2023. So the citizens need to sit up and have what I call direct and peripheral vision on their governors and give them what is called close marking all the way, either as individuals or collectively at homes, in our churches, in our mosques, and as organizations, because the truth is, the erosion of our value system is what has brought us to where we are today. Like I said earlier, the issue of wastage is not just in the presidency, it's a national cultural malaise. And unless we understand what I always say, that this theory that I have of the leadership value chain, a singular leader at the top is not enough to bring the desired change in a country, whether at national or subnational level. So I'm happy also, kudos to the citizen. We've done a lot of job, build up to the election, and even after elections, We saw a lot of reversals of decisions by Mr. President just because Mr. President is listening to the reaction of the people or the actions of the people. So I dare say Nigeria is at one of the highest political awareness, and people are actually doing the work now. I believe that will trickle down at the subnationals. That is the only way we can see those impacts. And unless we have impact as subnationals, the progress we are expecting to see as a nation will not come.
And here in the studio, the question was also asked to your co-analyst about the perception or how the federal government should view the issue of the Oronsai report, which has been, a burning issue all this while. And, there were so many recommendations which you must have, followed at the time. And one of the recommendations that report, issued was the issue of what to do with these anti-corruption agencies, ICPC, the Code of Conduct Bureau, and the EFCC and the like. Well, Mr. Steve Oronsoye was of the opinion that these agencies should be merged, and he gave recommendations in other regards, merging what he called similar agencies. Do you buy that in this drive to cut down the cost of governance?
Yes, I buy it to an extent that we should recalibrate the entire governance structure of Nigeria. I think that in a nutshell is what Oronsoye is saying. To streamline, to recalibrate, make it more efficient, more leaner and more efficient. But in making it more leaner and efficient, while I totally agree that some of these organizations are actually duplications, of roles and responsibilities with due respect to the act setting them up, albeit we are an emerging polity, and therefore there will be reviews here and there. I totally agree. Some of these agencies, for example, ICPC and EFCC, should be merged. But while we are doing it, we also need to look at the fine lines and the thought processes that brought about these entities, and do what I call, focal point streamlining. What am I saying? You don't have to merge organizations to achieve leaner and more efficient governance framework, because you may end up with what you have with INEC. I am of the school of thought that INEC should actually be deconstructed, because it has become a behemoth of an institution with a chairman struggling to do regulation, enforcement, operations. So sometimes we need to sit down and say, do we merge them or do we make them leaner and more efficient? Because sometimes you go and see the organizations, people are just sitting down doing nothing. So the core vision of setting up those institutions should be revisited. And then if there is need to merge, we merge. If there is no need to merge, we streamline and make more efficient. You have a lean, very small unit of an organization. Sometimes you may even, reduce the size or reduce the role within the framework of governance and say, let it just be lean, elite, and purpose-driven and more efficient. And that way you have saved costs and you get more efficiency in terms of outcomes and impacts. But while we are at it, talking about Oronsoye report and all that, Veronica and Kemi, the disposition and the attitude of these government functionaries should also be an issue to be dealt with by Mr. President. And I'm happy we have seen what is going on with the investigations in the Ministry of Humanitarian and all that. But that is just one case that it shouldn't be an isolated case. You see this attitude and disposition of government officials that leave a bad taste in the mouth. There is no modesty in their attitude, whether at the National Assembly or executive level. And it is even permeating into the judiciary. The crass display of affluence and raw cash, the videos we have been seeing trended, right from, during the former administration, but it's becoming more of a spectacle, and reducing the offices of ministers and CEOs of MDS and insulting the office of Mr. President, and more importantly, insulting the sensitivities of Nigerians. At this critical moment, a minister or a chief executive or their family members displaying wealth. We say we don't have dollars. They are spraying dollars all over the place. That is a total misplacement of priorities and lack of understanding of the roles people are given. So I want to see Mr. President also driving this going forward. People that are displaying affluence have also given us an opportunity to start asking them questions. And maybe they are not ready to do the job, so they can go and do another kind of business. Over and beyond streamlining governance, The attitude, the cultural attitude, or the culture, the corporate culture of Nigeria is what has to change. And that is changing the mindset, that is changing the attitude. I give you an example, and you can go and check. Towards the last quarter of a year and the first quarter of the next year, you see a lot of jamboree. You see civil servants that are not even up to deputy director or assistant director level, buying properties all over in Abuja, in Lagos, build up to the budget and after the budget. And that is why we are saying this budget padding issue is an issue. Procurement malpractices have to be checked. And then I also have to speak to the regulatory and law enforcement agencies. Their KPIs will also include savings and what you have been able to proactively stop. Not you have regulatory agencies and law enforcement agencies more or less like reporters. They only report after the fact. No consequence management. I will close with this. Anywhere there is no what I call consequence management, Veronica and Kemi, there will be no progress. When you appraise people, there will be consequence, either promotion or otherwise. When people commit crime, there should be consequences. And even for the regulatory agencies, for the law enforcement agencies too, there should be consequence. Because the public service rules, actually having studied it, have captured all these areas. So even for them that are hunting should be hunted. Unless we have these checks and balances, we will continue having blowing grammar on TV and writing on papers. Nothing will change. The attitude, the culture, the sensitivities have to change for Nigeria to move forward. I want to see leaders taking their role seriously. A minister shouldn't be going about brandishing cash and living affluently when the president is busy struggling to put the country in order. And also that is the same thing. You go to look for money from multilateral agencies, from the international community. You go with a retinue of people, but not just the retinue is the issue. The bling bling, the display of wealth is an anathema, is a paradox. You are begging, but then you look richer than the person you are begging from. It doesn't make sense. I think these are critical issues that we need to look at, and before the end of the year, we can see things, changing for the better for us as a country.
Absolutely. Let's come to the studio now. I'd like for you to react to this matter of our attitude, the mentality, how we display wealth, even when we are begging as it is. We've seen videos of these persons, just display wealth. And even when they come into office, when they win this position, get the appointment, we see how their families get together, celebrate. So it's not just about the appointees, but also about the people around them, the families who believe that this is our time to eat our share of the national cake. So it's more like a circle. He talked about civil service rules. We have all the laws, but the implementation is seemingly looking like the challenge. Do we have the will to really drive home, these laws to ensure that we see persons being brought to account for everything they do? And if we are to change this mentality, how do we go about it?
Well, he mentioned
quite a number of issues.
A number of things. And he talked about consequence management.
Yes.
And that is where the challenge comes in. Where there is no consequence for actions or inactions, there's impunity. And that culture of impunity comes in to that, whatever I do, nothing is going to happen.
Right.
They will probably just talk a bit of time, maybe a little bit to razzle me, and then everything will die down. People will tell you that even if it's on social media, give it 2 weeks maximum, all the noise will come down. And so life can continue. But where there are consequences, and that's actually what even Lee Kuan Yew was saying over Singapore. The moment people know that there are no consequences for whatever they're doing, there are implications. The tendency is there as humans to hold back and to adjust. But where they realize that anything goes, people will go wild. Now, where I come from, they say something that if you don't try a charm on your own siblings, neighbors and outsiders will not be afraid of you. What that means is this. When the president decides to punish somebody who has messed up within the government, a senior person, like what you said, the minister went on holiday, on vacation with a business mogul, and he came back. Questions were asked. One, you went with this person. It already shows that, number one, you couldn't afford that trip on your own. Secondly, there's already a relationship which will affect and impact on your deliverables and where this person is concerned. So in a way, there's a compromise. A compromise that's already on ground. So at the end of the day, this person was not just sacked, but was also prosecuted. Now, when that happens, others put back to say, wait, if this happens now, then I think we have to be cautious. Now, I'm sure that with what has happened in the Ministry of Humanitarian Affairs and what have you, some other ministries and ministers would be careful.
Sit up.
They'll sit up and be careful. Now, let us begin to look at it. If we have a minister jailed, a serving minister jailed, and a permanent secretary jailed, you have this person, what's it called?
Is that enough
Sacked.
in itself?
No,
Look at the laws.
No, it's not enough in itself. But the issue is it starts from somewhere. See, once people begin to see that there are consequences, and there are laws and ethics, and there are laws and rules.
We've seen governors jailed, but that hasn't changed the attitude.
When you say governors jailed, these are what you call former governors. Now, what you see there, people will tell you there's a lot of politics involved in some of these things. But we're talking of a serving minister. The sitting president says, no, investigate. And the report comes in, and this person is wrong, is found wanting, and is jailed for it. And nothing happens. Others will be like, if I mess up, then my head is on the gallows. So in a way, there are rules, there are laws. Can we begin to enforce these laws?
And talking about enforcement quickly, people are also of the opinion that the civil service, in terms of mindset changing now, the civil service, something drastic needs to be done about the civil
cleaning
service.
up of the
Even if, many governors, it's a political decision having to, lessen the number of civil service. That's a tall order, really. Nobody has had, to talk about that issue. But what should we do? Because all this Oronsoye recommendations and all of that would naturally affect, the number at the least of civil servants that we have in Nigeria.
Quickly.
Now, the issue here is this. When people begin to realize that there's a lean government, one. Secondly, civil servants have their work cut out for them. But what you find out is that because there's just so much latitude given, people will say instead of coming to work, some civil servants, 2-3 days, they are not at work.
Right.
And what happens? Because there's nothing to be done.
Okay.
So I think that we need to begin to look at this and also call a lot of things to questions. We must know what you're doing, why you're doing what you're doing. Your deliverables must be there. Okay. And once those things are there, people actually will sit off.
Let's quickly cross over to Baba Yusuf. Your final thoughts on this matter and the question of, do we have the will to really drive this culture of consequence management?
I will close with 2 points. One, meritocracy. Mr. President, I look forward to Mr. President Bola Tinubu entrenching the culture of meritocracy, round pegs and round holes. We want to see significant reduction. I know we cannot zero in the issue of parochial interest, ethnicity, tribalism, and all that, but meritocracy will drive that. The cost, Veronica and Kemi, the cost of putting the wrong person in the right place is more costly than any other thing. The attitude will show, the actions will show, and the consequences will be dire on the socio-economic well-being of the country or at the subnational levels. So I hope that will be key, going forward, that will drive the government of President Bola Tinubu.
We have to leave the conversation here now. We must thank you, strategist, policy analyst, Group CEO, Global Investment and Trade Company, Baba Yusuf, as well as the strategy consultant, public affairs analyst, Kenny Adenuba, for your time on the program.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you both. All right, this is where we'll draw the